Hey guys, welcome to episode 10 of Cryonaut TV. I'm Jake, aka Cryosion, and today I wanted to talk about parallel effects. This is a great way to add effects to your tracks while still maintaining your original sound. Check out some great examples I have of this coming right after this. Using parallel effects is something that every great producer should know how to do. You can take a boring track like this and turn it into this. Now, at first glance, you may not be able to tell the difference between those two, but let me show you what I did exactly. So I added effects to pretty much each channel up here, and then dialed back this dry-wet knob, which is the same thing as parallel effects. So, on this channel here, we have the wavetable synth, which by itself sounds like this. And then with the echo device, so you can hear there's a little bit of a delay there. So by default, this echo device is set to 70%, which means that 70% of the sound is going to be the wet sound, or the affected sound, which is delay in this case, and 30% is going to be your original source sound, your input. So that sounds like this. And now you can kind of hear that the echoing part of the sound is a lot louder than the initial hit for each note, and it kind of overwhelms it. Sometimes that's what you want, sometimes you don't want that. So if we go up to 100%, it's going to be all the affected sound and none of the initial sound. And you can tell that easily by putting on the metronome, and you won't hear any of these notes hitting on the beat. They'll all be coming after it. So pay attention to this first beat especially. You can notice that it starts and then the sound comes in because that initial note isn't playing. So it's 100% the affected sound. If you put it down to 0, you're only going to hear the source sound, which will be the same thing as if the delay was turned off. So for a much better sound than either of those options, we want something kind of in the middle. I want to be able to hear that initial hit for each note, but I also want to have some delay. So something between 20 and 30% usually is pretty good for delay. You can hear the original sound, and then there's a little bit softer delay that follows it, which just gives it a nice feel, a nice spatial kind of thing. So by using parallel delay here, parallel effects with this dry-wet knob, we can get a really nice pluck kind of sound that has some delay on it, but it's not overwhelming. Our next sound was our chords. So without these effects over here, you have this kind of sound. Which is our Ableton's operator synth, which is basically set to a saw wave. So really simple. So by itself, that just is a regular saw wave, kind of boring. As we add in the amp and pedal effects, you hear the sound drastically change into a much more distorted and much more interesting sound. So you can hear there's a lot more distortion going on. There's a lot of interesting effects happening. And that's mainly because of this dry-wet on both of these. So if we were to use just the amp and turn it all the way up, we'd get sort of a blown-out kind of sound. And as we bring it down, you can hear it comes back into a little bit of control, and just it's more of my taste. This is all about taste. You can do whatever you want, but I personally don't usually like having it so distorted that you can't really hear the sound anymore. So between 40 and 50% right there, you have enough of a distortion that it adds those extra harmonics up top that you can distort it even more with the pedal device. But even by itself, it just adds enough harmonics that it sounds a lot better to me than just the original sound. Same thing with the pedal. If we add this in now and bring the dry-wet down, it's not going to be affected really at all. And then as I bring it in, you'll hear it kind of change the sound. So at 100%, it's completely distorted, just really, really grungy, dirty kind of a sound. That may be what you're going for, and that's great, but in this case, I don't really want it to be quite that distorted, so I want to bring this back down to around 70%. And again, this is going to be 70% distorted, but 30% the original clean sound as if this device was turned off. And same thing over here, 44% of the sound is with the amp, and 60% roughly is the original sound without this device. So to me, that sounds a lot better than the original source sound without any of this stuff. Lastly, we have our drums. I have a couple different compressors and drum bus things going on here, but really we're going to look at these two right here in the middle. We have a compressor for the whole drum kit in and of itself to kind of bring up the volume because some of the stuff is kind of quiet. And then we have a drum bus plugin, which is new to Ableton Live 10, just to add some boom to it and a little bit of transient shaping. That's really all we're doing there. So if I turn these off, here's what our drums sound like by themselves. And then with the compressor, so you can hear as I turn the compressor dry wet all the way up to 100%, the sound changed a little bit. When we bring it back down, you're going to have more of the uncompressed sound joining in with this compressed sound to kind of balance it out a little bit, because usually 100% of the compression is a little bit too much. It sounds processed and fake. So adding back in the source sound helps it out a lot. And that kind of helps fill in some of those gaps when you have both sides of the spectrum there. Next up is the drum bus, so we'll bring that in. So a big part of that is the boom and the transient shaping here. So again, maybe you don't want it quite that harsh, so we'll tone down the effect here and bring in some of the source sound. That way we get a nice balance of both worlds there. So in the end, we have a sound, overall a track that sounds like this again. So that's all great and good, and if you're using Ableton Live, then most of the plugins and effects will have this dry wet knob. But what if you're not using Ableton Live? What if you're using a third-party plugin that doesn't have that? Well, there's one other option that you can do. So if we come back to our wavetable sound over here, we can, in Ableton Live, it's as easy as pushing Control-G or Command-G, and then clicking this little button over here for the chain list, and then we're going to duplicate it. So there are now two of these. So we'll take this echo device, throw it onto the second one, and then you'll see our first chain only has wavetable. Second chain is wavetable and echo. Now, it's important that you turn the dry wet all the way up to 100% when you're going to do this method, because this chain is going to act as your affected chain, and this is going to be your original clean source chain. So now all you have to do is adjust the volume levels of each one to kind of get your balance, your mix. So if you want your affected sound to be quieter, you turn this down, and then you have this sound. If you wanted to switch that and have more of your effect and less of the original, you would turn this one down and turn this one back up. So you can see it's basically the same thing as that dry wet knob, and this kind of idea can be used no matter what DAW you're using, no matter what plugin you're using. So if you're not using Ableton, you don't have this dry wet knob right here, don't worry about it. There's always a way around that. Using these techniques is a great way to start your song and get your sounds developed and start to really arrange your track and get it all put together. Once you've done all that, go watch my video about mixing, put up here, to figure out how to package your final song and get it all put together nice and neat. So go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and let me know in the comments below what kind of video you want to see next. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'm Jake, aka Corrosion, and I'll see you next time.